Mind on fire, hustle your way to mental clarity. My name is Rhonda Mack, and I am a certified dementia practitioner and a brain fitness coach. And I want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to speak at the seventh annual Aging and Rejuvenation Conference. Today, I want to talk to you why it is so important for you to hustle your way back to mental clarity, because there's a difference in the terminology that I'm going to use for mind on fire. And mind on fire is saying that there are some ways and some reasons why we should hustle our way as professionals in the aging field, particularly ones that are working in direct care, should hustle their way back to mental clarity. After working for over a decade in the field of aging and working on the front lines and providing care for those who are experiencing memory decline, I had the opportunity for the last several years and even now to work with professionals who are on the front line, educating them about the best practices and working with those participants or those clients or residents that are experiencing memory loss, and also providing support for those professionals. So today, what I want to discuss to you, not only the cognitive wellness check and also decline in the participants that they notice and the residents, but also the cognitive decline that they're starting to mirror, that like the participants that they're taking care of. The other thing I want to discuss today in our objectives is the challenges and the emotional techniques. But instead of techniques, I'm going to only have time to discuss one, and the stress and the impact that it has on the older adults that you're taking care of. You and I know that the aging population is ever growing. And because it's ever growing, there is a demand for care. There is a demand care for persons who are experiencing memory loss, new cases. There's a demand in care for caregivers. There's a demand in care, particularly for those who are on the front line. And not only, and least to say, that those who are helping along in this care is that these are age workers. I have to tell this story of one of my participants who were in need of resources, and she came to me and she was 82 years old. And I remember asking her on the assessment about her income, and one of the questions asked, was she working? And she said yes. And I said, "Man, what is it that you do?" And she said, "I work for an agency providing personal care for a person who is experiencing memory loss." And at that point, I began to ask her some more questions about her role and what is it that caused her to get up every day to help a person who is experiencing memory loss. First, she said she did have some concerns about her own memory loss, but it was such a joy for her to help someone who was experiencing. And in fact, her phrase was that it's a pleasure to help someone who's worse off than me. And all I could say was just, wow. So even the field is growing, we see that there are a number of people and age workers are going back into the workforce, particularly those who have the nursing degrees or some type of medical degrees, are going back to lend a helping hand in this demand of care as it grows. As it grows, the emotional toll also. We notice that not only are they experiencing it from the residents and the challenges of the day-to-day task of getting up and just making sure that these ADLs are met every day with their residents. And because of this and the high demand, we noticed that many of them started to experience what is called burnout. Not only are they at risk, they're in the midst of burnout. And because they were in the midst of burnout, they were starting to experience some of the same common challenges that their participants are now facing. And now they're beginning to try to figure out, what is it that is causing me to mirror some of the same things that the residents are now facing, the ones that I'm in care of. We know that burnout is associated with attention and memory, and sometimes you may experience some cognitive impairment. But now, me as a worker is now faced with some of the same symptoms due to the overburden, the compassionate fatigue that I give, to going out every day to make sure that this person's need is met the best way that I can. And because I am going beyond and trying to help someone, or to make sure that this residents get those needs met or fed today, or needs or these ADLs are being met, but yet I'm experiencing it because not only do I have one residence, I have a caseload now because of the lack of workers that are in the field. And so when I step into these facilities, these are the voices that I hear from these participants. And I begin to not only compile my own need assessments, but I begin to say, what is it that I can do? What is the most holistic practice that I can do or I can share with them to be able to bring some restoration to what is considered burnout? And today I like to call it mind on fire. No longer will I present it as burnout. Because mind on fire is that you're providing this compassionate care, but at the same time, you're feeling fatigue. Mind on fire is the overwhelm of just giving yourself in a daily task. Mind on fire is trying to meet the care plan at the end of the day, and yet it becomes stressful. And so, how do I take those challenges that I'm facing, those overburning, that compassionate fatigue, that mental overdrive that I'm experiencing, and also those symptoms of burnout? How do I get myself out of being emotionally exhausted as I take care of someone every single day? Now, you and I have to take a look at this because some of these workers and some of these people in this profession, after they have been giving a story like, I have a hole in my roof, and it is when it rains, it leaks in my house. And so I don't have the money to fix it. And I called every resource that there is in this community, and no one seems to help. But at night, I have to lay hearing raindrops come to my through my house when it rains. How do I get help? And so that burden that is on the heart of a 70 and 80-year-old becomes impressed upon the heart of that care worker. And so that care worker now goes into just trying to figure out, what is it that I can do to help that person? What is it that I can do to provide that care? And they begin to reach out to other resources to try to find the care that that person needs. That worrying about that patient can cause you to go into mental overdrive. That, my friend, is called mind on fire. That compassion fatigue is called mind on fire. So how do you hustle your way back to this? How do you get yourself out of the state where you are not experiencing this for one moment? How do you begin to recognize that I am in burnout? I am in a place where I'm no longer am good for the person that I am serving. How do I get to a point that I can start to pivot and find purpose and repurpose instead of pushing myself harder and trying to make sure that everything get done at the end of the day? And how can I find moments for me? And how can I find a moment to reset myself? And how can I reclaim my mind? How can I hustle my way back to mental clarity? Well, there's a lot of resources that were out here and also a lot of information on the topic I'm going to discuss to you. How do you get your way back? It's called micro moments. As I sat down and did research and research and research, given that micro moments is something that a person has to choose to do. But after researching and saw how it helped, and it was a tool to use for those who are suffering mental illness to help bring calmness to those who experience trauma, I began to look at it and say, if this micro moments would help those that are in a traumatic moment of crisis right now, then what could it do for the person who are in direct care and experiencing the same symptoms as though they're taken care of? Micro moments. These are brief moments, small moments that remind us to stop and just let go. But even in these moments, it must be a moment and a time that you can find for yourself, whether it's 5 minutes, whether it's 10 minutes, or 15 minutes. One of the things that I used to realize in working with older adults that I was guilty of is that I wanted to make sure that they were cared for at the end of the day. That even the times that I had moments to take away and to step away from my desk, I wouldn't. Because in that ringing of that phone, I knew that on the other end, that someone needed their medications and could not afford it. I knew at the end of the day that someone did not have a place to rest their head. They may have become evicted, or they're taking care of a loved one who is experiencing cognitive decline. So micro moments. How do we take these moments? How do we take these little attentional moments, and how do these moments matter? Well, I'm going to give you at least 5 ways to do it. The first one is called the power of breath work. You and I know about it. We heard about it. But box breathing does work. The little time that you have between picking up that phone and meeting with the powers of bees for fighting on some issue of aging, or whether you're in direct care, taking the moment to inhale and exhale on just 4 counts would have a way of lowering your cortisol. It would also regulate your attention. And the most of all, if I would breathe in 4 times and out 4 times, not only is it resetting me, but also it's bringing me to a place in my emotional resilience where I have the ability to manage difficult moments. At this time, I begin to start doing these because when I go from one task and one patient and one resident and meeting with one person that's burnt out and helping those that are experiencing cognitive decline, just taking 4 deep breaths would regulate my attention so that I can move forward. The second one, if the person just simply, I would tell them just simply for just 5 minutes with closing your eyes, whether you're sitting at a desk, whether you're in an office, or you have 5 minutes to step outside the building in your car, just place your hands over your heart, because placing your hands over your heart can activate calmness in the midst of frustration. When your name is called and it says that you need it down in room 202. For those professionals who are standing in the gap, who are experiencing fatigue, if you would just put your hands over your heart, and what you would notice is that you're activating calmness. Not only are you activating calmness, it has an effect on slowing down your heart rate and again lowering your cortisol levels, and also your parasympathetic activities where your nervous system begins to slow down and it returns you back into the present moment. If you would take just 5 minutes and return back to yourself, this would make a difference. Number three, the power of no. This is one of the things in the challenge that many of us face who are working on the front lines. And so we have to learn that there is something in the power of no. No does not mean that I'm declining you from what you're asking me to do. I'm saying no to myself and to identify the one thing to decline. And what I mean by that is that I will say no, and I will get up and say, it's worth me taking 5 minutes before I go in and check on Mrs. Jones. It's worth me taking my 15 minutes that I'm allotted to just take a deep breath. If it's not so much of an emergency, I can ask one of my coworkers. And I can choose to say yes instead. If I would do this, if a person who works on the front line in professional care in the field of aging would just take a moment and just say yes to, yes, I am going to take that lunch break. I was one of the ones that I was very guilty at that wouldn't take a vacation because I felt like that I was needed, being transparent here. And that I wanted to make sure at the end of the day that this participant, this resident, got what they were needing. And so, not when I say no, it's not no to the duties, it's not no to the care that I'm providing. It's saying, no, Rhonda, instead of you going to do one task for another, I want you to take a lunch break. I want you to step outside and I want you to just get some air and do some deep breathing. This, my friend, just saying no to yourself and saying yes to the things that you know that is right for you to do will reduce the cognitive load. And I say, this, by saying no, will protect your mental clarity. So I'm now saying no to skipping my lunch break. That means no, it is so worthy of you to sit down and to enjoy your lunch break. Number three, this is my favorite one. And because I'm a love of nature, this is like green micro breaks. It's something about nature, or just standing in the midst of nature, or just seeing how flowers are growing and trees are blossoming. If you would just step away in this micro moment and be intentional. And when you step away, you are stepping into a place where your stress is now becoming reduced. Did you know just watching and staring at a tree or being near greenery, whether you're taking your trail walk or whether you're a person who just decided just to sit near nature, it is a restorer. It helps with cognitive function. It balances your emotions. And not only that, it is helping you and giving you creative ways to be able to solve your problems. How about that? Sitting in nature. If you're a person to say, hey, I know I'm helping, but I don't like to go out in nature. Well, did you know staring out the window, having a brief glimpse of nature, just a glimpse, can restore attention and reduce stress? Did you know just putting a plant on your desk is like a micro restoration of a moment, and a walk outside does wonders? And not to talk about dual tasking. That is where you're walking and you are doing something cognitive, whether you're counting trees and you're walking, whether you have a friend that walks along beside you and you're sharing this fascinating thing that happened or a new book you have read. These micro moments, whether it's 5 minutes to share something good or to watch or to do something good, it is a restore of your neuroplasticity, and it's also bringing new neurons and pathways and strengthening your brain. And also, it's about memory training. In fact, these care workers were concerned about their cognitive wellness. And because they was concerned about it, how do you bring this back to a place where they now can have some cognitive clarity? These 5 ways are ways that you can hustle your way back to mental clarity. Mind on fire is what I call burnout. Hustle your way is what I call the micro moments that you have. If you would take 5 or 10 minutes a day, you will see that this will have a tremendous effect in your day and in your cognitive wellness. So, in closing, whether you're again on the front lines and providing direct care, whether you're in research, whether you are a person who is caring for someone, a caregiver, it's time to hustle your way back to mental clarity and take advantage of the micro moments. Hi, again, I just want to say thank you. My name is Rhonda Mack, and hustle your way back to mental clarity. And remember that the next time you see someone, a caregiver or professional who's working in direct care, it's not burnout, it's mind on fire. And it's a representation of the compassion and the love that they're giving to those who are experiencing cognitive wellness and cognitive decline. Thank you so much again. If you want to get in touch with me, my email is at the bottom. Thank you for having me.